Recently, there was an article in the paper and Talk on the News that an atheist and academic defends churches' tax-free status, actually calls them vital to New Zealand's social fabric. University of Waikato law professor Dr. Juliet Chevalier-Watts says New Zealand churches do so much good for the country that they should pay even less tax, not more. Joining me in the studio to speak to this today is Ana Ika. Now, Ana is Senior Social Policy Analyst Advocate at the Social Policy and Parliamentary Unit of the Salvation Army of New Zealand. Kia ora and welcome.
Kia ora. Thanks for having me, Lizzie.
So in this report and interviews that I've been listening to, Ana, it says that Dr. Chevalier-Watts is an atheist and she's an expert in charity law. And she's come to these conclusions, which is pretty good. But what's your response to all of this talk?
Yeah, I think what Dr. Chevalier-Watts has highlighted, it's not foreign to us. We know this. We know that, the charity sector or Christian social services or agencies that are run from a faith background, we sort of call them the shadow of social welfare because where social welfare fails, that's where all the churches step in. I thought it was a really great article. I at the back of my mind, I was sort of hoping, because she's an atheist, that she would dig deep as to why we do what we do. And that's because of Christ, that, we're his hands and his feet in the community.
Yes.
Yeah, but ultimately, Christian agencies and churches, they do compensate for the holes and the gaps that the government doesn't fill.
Yeah.
And we've done that for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, Look, I just saw something about the Salvation Army the other day. Was it 142 years? Maybe it was one branch of, but something popped up the other day on social media. I mean, you guys have been doing this kind of thing for a long time, supporting communities.
Yeah, I think the Salvation Army pioneered addiction services in New Zealand. We pioneered reintegration services that wasn't happening before, those who pioneered the Salvation Army in New Zealand arrived. Not only that the Salvation Army and the Anglican and the Presbyterians came to New Zealand and started up all of these social service support for those who couldn't afford it, but they still do that to this day.
Yeah. Sometimes, you hear people complaining about things. It's just the world we live in. And they complain about the government doing, not doing enough. But, oh gosh, just imagining if the likes of, like you were saying, filling in the gaps, Salvation Army and other organisations, the country would be a total mess, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking, about what if we all went on strike, Lizzie? What if all Christian organisations, faith-based organisations, went on strike? It would be chaos. It would be chaos in our communities. But I guess the comforting thing in knowing that is that we don't show up for the paycheck.
No.
We show up because, Galatians tells us to do good unto all men and to find opportunities to do good. And so we do that because of the drive that we have in our relationship with Christ to be his hands and feet in the community. And so we won't go on strike because we're not driven by the financial aspect. And so, that's what happens in a lot of churches and charities is that, you've got volunteers, you've got staff, and you've got people that show up because they've got a heart for this work and not necessarily because they're chasing that dollar sign, which unfortunately in the charity sector, there's not a lot of dollar signs in that. So
I hear you. Definitely it's about having that heart for serving mankind and the greater good, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And as you said, so many organisations, including ours, has a lot of amazing volunteers. So this conversation is in the public space, and it is cool that an atheist is seeing, she's having some sort of realisation, and I think that's really powerful, actually, someone outside the faith sphere to actually speak into that. But in terms of the Salvation Army and this conversation of churches potentially losing their tax-free status, is this a real thing? Are you concerned, worried? What's kind of going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think every government that comes in, they're always looking at sort of that the tax on charity status, and so we for the Salvation Army, the government gives us funding in regards to contracts, but we subsidise majority of our services. So we put our own money that is generously donated to the Salvation Army into our housing projects to meet the gap in regards to food and the myriad of services that we have here at the Salvation Army, that comes out of our own pockets. I mean, the reality is, if the IRD consultation that's going on at the moment to see whether they should tax charity businesses or charities that make some form of profit, a lot of that profit goes back to the social service anyway. It's not necessarily for profit; it's for purpose.
Yes.
So whatever profit, the very small profit that charities make in whatever arm they have, whether it's the op shops or whether it's another arm that makes some sort of profit, that profit all goes back into creating purpose for the community. And so I think if there was more red tape on charities, if there was sort of more barriers on charities, then they would have to drop doing those services. So the government would have to step in at a higher cost, and not necessarily with the heart that community and charity and churches have for the community. And so that raises significant red flags for them in the future. So it's not a really wise move, but it has happened quite frequently when different governments come in and they have this sort of moment that what if we just tax the charities? It would actually cost them a lot more in the long run, to tax charities and churches. Yeah.
And my understanding is that within the Salvation Army, you made mention of wanting to rally staff to contact the Inland Revenue Department. Is that right?
We've encouraged all of our church members, those who work and volunteer for the Salvation Army, to write their own letter. I think as an organisation, our unit particularly, we write a lot of the legal submissions on behalf of the Salvation Army. But it's really important that they hear from our frontline staff, that they hear from our volunteers, that this is the impact that they're making in their day-to-day work or in their day-to-day volunteering with the Salvation Army. These are the faces that they're seeing, the lives that are changed. And I think that's sort of that lived experience or the impact that's happening on the front line. And you would see that here as well. A lot of sort of the bureaucrats don't often see that.
Yeah.
And so I think that was our urge to internally Salvation Army and also to other churches, for those that are listening, to write to Inland Revenue and tell them what's the impact that you're making and the lives that are being changed because you're showing up day in, day out. Regardless of how much money they're paying you or whether you're just doing it out of love, to show that, this would impact significantly on society as we know it. And so, it's allowing them the power to have a say because this will ultimately affect them if the proposals that they're proposing go through.
Yeah. Ana Ika, Salvation Army, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Lizzie.